Well, before we get started, I'd like to make an announcement. Since last November, I have been recording an audiobook of my book, Universe. There we go. Because I want to get it out there in as many formats as possible for as many people as possible. I started off by releasing it as something for patrons on Patreon. So chapter by chapter, week by week, as I was recording it. And it has taken me the last half year to record the whole thing because it's a big book. The total running time over 33 chapters is 14 hours and 22 minutes. It's a big book. If you can imagine this in the books on tape era, that would have really looked like something on the shelf, wouldn't it? Given that you can typically only have 1 hour or 90 minutes per tape, right? So back in the day, they used to abridge books so they could put them on less tapes. But we're in the digital era, so it's a full unabridged audiobook. It's complete and it's available right now if audiobooks are your thing. All you have to do is go to the Patreon site, link below, and set up an account. Make a pledge, a monthly pledge of as little as $1. As soon as you do that, you have instant access to the whole audiobook. There are Patreon apps for your smartphone, your tablet. I think you can even do it in the car. So you can listen to it on the go quite easily. Once you're there in Patreon, it's not just the audiobook on offer, but there's hours of Q&As and there's other unlisted videos that are a bit more personal that I didn't want to make public. So there's lots of stuff in there for you if you want to consider becoming a Patreon. Or a patron on Patreon. Okay, link below if that's your thing. No pressure. Right, to the subject at hand then. I got an email earlier today from a guy that we will just call H, right? I'll keep this anonymous. And you'll know what this is about given the subject of this video, but I want to be sensitive to this guy. The reason I'm making a video response is because there's a lot in here that's worth unpacking that I think can be helpful to many people who are watching. So here we go. Hello Darryl. Originally I came to your YouTube channel to watch your videos on ZX Spectrum programming. They're really good. Thank you. But recently I found something out about religion I'd like to tell you. All my life I've mostly been an atheist with a light tendency to Buddhism maybe. I'll just stop and comment at this point. That's a really good starting point for anybody developing their own worldview. Atheism with a touch of Buddhism. Atheism's fine as a starting point because you start with skepticism, you start with the non-belief in God or gods. The problem with atheism, in my mind, is naturalism. The reliance on the view that all of reality consists of that which is measurable, right? Whereas if you're a Buddhist, or if you have leanings in that direction, you're more open to a more metaphysical view of the nature of reality, that form comes from formlessness, that behind all this, underpinning all this, is something that we might call the infinite, the immeasurable, or if you're a Hindu, Brahman, right? Something that you can't get to with your instruments, something that isn't bittable, if you like, in terms of splitting one thing into another. Reality is a unity, and that unity underpins the apparent separateness all around us. Yeah, you'll get in touch with that if you're a Buddhist. But typically in atheism, there's an assumption that all the bits of reality that we see around us, that those things are the ground of being, that everything is measurable in an ultimate sense to give us a theory of everything. And I think that's not true for various reasons. So anyway, let's go on. But now it seems I have an illness in several inner organs that can either leave me alone healthy or it can kill me. It's just not decided yet. Right now the symptoms are a bit uncomfortable but relatively mild. So neither me nor doctors can prevent it from getting worse if it does. So basically right now I'm only walking on earth as long as God lets me. That's a weird situation. Yeah, I'm not going to pretend I know what that feels like. I do know what it's like to watch someone die of a long-term illness. My mother died of cancer, and it was awful watching her deteriorate over a period of 1 year. But I don't know what it's like to feel that sense that you have something wrong with you that could just end your life soon. Interestingly, Brad Warner, who is a Zen Buddhist, has suffered something similar to you, and maybe not as extreme. I don't know what your particular illness is, but in Brad's family tree on his mother's side, there is Huntington's disease, which is passed down genetically, and it's what killed his mother. And I think it typically gets people in their 30s and 40s. So Brad went through a period of his life where he was really, really on edge about the fact that this is the critical time now. But he's now in his 50s and he has escaped it thus far. So I guess he's relaxing a bit more about that. But yeah, I don't know what it's like to feel that maybe you could just inherit this thing, and you've a far greater chance of inheriting it than the average person does because of your mother. But you should maybe look Brad Warner up and hear him talk about this, or read some of his books. There's one in particular called Zen Wrapped in Karma, Dipped in Chocolate, which is very autobiographical and talks about the death of his mother in that. Yeah, you might find that helpful. So, you go on to say, I used to say there's no life after death, but what do I gain from that? Not much. The freedom to do bad things for a few decades maybe, but is that good? Do I want that? I don't know why you would characterize that freedom as the freedom to do bad things. I don't believe in an afterlife. I have the freedom to do bad things, but I choose not to do bad things. I'm certainly not a perfect person, but in terms of my interactions with other people, I'm fairly moral. Most of my immorality is confined to the haunted house. But yeah, I don't want to go crazy. So I don't know why you would think that an afterlife factors into that. If you feel, is it the idea that if you're a good person, you go to heaven or something like that? I don't know. Well, that's wrong anyway, according to Christianity, because it's justification by faith alone, not by works, right? But anyway, I'm digressing a bit here. Yeah. Morality based upon the motivation of reward or the avoidance of punishment is not really a very good morality. It's not coming from the heart. It's coming from something imposed upon you. It's the carrot and the stick. Yeah. I don't need the carrot and the stick. I'm okay being who I am without the need for a reward. I really do not expect to live on after death at all. But the more interesting thing you say there is, I used to say there's no life after death, but what do I gain from that? Well, it's not about what you gain or what you don't gain. If you're interested in truth, you can't let yourself be guided by subjective concerns like, what do I get out of this? You're not chasing the truth if that's your motivation, if that's the question you're asking. You're just looking for a fantasy that will make you feel better. Right? You've got to put this on firmer ground than that. That's not good enough. I know you're suffering with this, and I don't want to be unkind or unnecessarily cruel, but I also don't want to pull my punches here. And ultimately, I do think I have a better outlook on life than you do. So that's where we're going with this. Okay, let's move on. But if I just say afterlife, Jesus and his Father are there to make everything good, it just makes me feel so much better. It may be true or maybe not true. I don't care. It's just better for my health today. I can understand the motivation, I really can, but it's based on thin air. It's based on thin air. You say, I think that's what's meant with the good news, with tidings of joy. As long as I dwell in the house of the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Yeah, I can't look at life that way, I really can't. Look, there are over 7 billion people in the world. So, somewhere right now, a child who never did much harm to anybody is being, say, raped. Probably a whole lot of children are being raped. Someone somewhere is being tortured. Someone somewhere is being murdered. Is the Lord their shepherd? You know, it's okay for you and your little cocoon of the life that you're leading to maybe indulge in that fantasy, but if you just look outwards a bit, you will see that the universe has what, I think it's Albert Camus said this term, it might be a different philosopher, I forget, but he referred to it as a benign indifference. The universe is indifferent. I like to say the universe is adversarial, right? But it's a benign indifference. It neither cares nor doesn't care about your welfare. There's a lot of luck involved in life. You know, I don't get to indulge in the idea that I have some kind of charmed life because I've got a connection to the divine. I really don't believe that at all. I could die 2 hours from now. I could die the next time I go out on my motorcycle. No way to know. I could have a tumor growing inside me right now, and I just don't know about it. But the thing also, you know, here's the thing, right? You know the old saying, no atheists in foxholes? It appears to be, it's kind of true in your case. But you got to know that you're choosing this because there's a perceived need for it. You know, you're not doing this because you want the Christian God. You're doing this because you get something out of it. You know, if you weren't suffering this illness, would you have chosen Christianity? I'm guessing not. You know, imagine, this may be a little cruel, I'm sorry, but imagine God is looking down on you and he's saying to you, well, you're only coming to me now because your back's against the wall. I mean, that's true, isn't it? It really is true. There's nothing objective. You know, you weren't convinced of Christianity and that's why you picked it. You picked it because it could alleviate your suffering. Okay. So whatever happens to me on this miserable earth, I don't find it miserable. I mean, that's a perception on your part. And there may be rather bad things to happen, as long as I don't let the devil, his demons and his money lead me into temptation, as long as I keep doing good, keep the 10 Commandments and try to do my best and do what I feel God wants me to do, in the end it will all be good. No, it won't all be good. Nobody gets out of here alive, right? I am going to die. I mean, it's been brought into sharp focus for you because of your illness, but I am profoundly aware of the fact that life does not last. You know, a lot of people, I think there's a real failure to integrate death into your understanding here in the Western world. And it's largely possible, well, I think it's attributed to Christianity, really, because Christianity turns death into an ogre, as an unnatural horror. Whereas I understand it as a perfectly natural process where, you know, before you die, typically a lot of people will have popped out their replacements, you know, in terms of children, who will then go on to pop out their replacements before they die. It's all a part of the natural process. It's not a horror. It can be quite degrading, depending on the method of how you die. It was certainly very degrading for my mother. But I'm going to die, regardless of whether I have an illness or not. I am going to die, and I'm okay with that. And you might say, well, you're okay with that, Darrell, because you can put the likelihood of that forward in time, maybe 20 years, maybe even 30 if you're lucky. No. And believe it or not, I'm feeling pretty creaky these days as a guy in his late 40s. I'm acutely aware of the fact that I'm going to die one day, and I am perfectly okay with it. Not in a way that makes me want to step out in front of buses and hasten it, but I'm just fine with the fact that life doesn't last, and it's here to be enjoyed while it does last, however long or however short that duration may be. Right? And how did I get to that understanding? It's just the way life actually is. And if you had gone down the Buddhist route a little bit more, you might have come to appreciate that insight which is at the heart of Buddhism, which is anatman, no self, non-self. There is no actual self in here. I can state it intellectually, but sometimes it just doesn't stick with people. A person, a seemingly separate person, a seemingly individual self, is just the universe manifesting in a location. So you're the universe manifesting in a location, and I'm the universe manifesting in a location. So we appear to be separate beings, but we're not, because we're the universe manifesting, right? We're the ground of, if you like, we're the ground of being manifesting as the universe manifesting as a human being. All right? So there was nothing that was born, and there is nothing that dies. There's just the temporary activity of consciousness in this location and in that location and in all those other locations. So I'm not really heavily attached to this so-called self, this so-called ego, because I see that it's a fiction. It's not real in any objective sense. The reality is the ground of being itself, and that's the real me. But you gotta do some serious contemplation before you get there, and Christianity won't take you there, because Christianity is all about the survival of the ego after death. So if you start with the ego as an atheist with Buddhist leanings, but you haven't quite got there yet, you start with the ego. And then you're immediately faced with the fact that, oh no, I may die someday. I may die sooner than I want to. And you're suddenly confronted with the fact that you haven't properly integrated death into your understanding. So you're looking for a solution. And here's Christianity. And it gives you the little sort of psychological placebo, this sort of little comfort blanket in the mind that tells you it's going to be all right. You get to live on after death. No, you don't. The true afterlife is consciousness manifesting right here as the next generation. Right? You are the afterlife of the people before you. Not an individual person, but you're the afterlife of the universe as it was manifesting in all the dead people before you. You see? This is the afterlife. There'll be another afterlife after me. It's all about here and now. And you also say, you've said, as long as I don't let the devil, his demons and his money lead me into temptation. This is a bit of an aside, but what do you know about the devil, really? The devil is just an idea. You've never met the devil. I know that because I know there is no devil, right? Satan is an idea. He's nothing more than the personification of man's carnal nature as a mythical being. We tend to separate the flesh from the devil, but the devil really is the flesh, the animal component of man. Why do you think he's portrayed with horns and fangs and things? Animalistic characteristics, right? And if there's the best reason of all that I can give you that to say that Christianity is not good for you is the fact that it represents not just the failure to integrate death into your understanding, but the failure to integrate the flesh into normal human existence. Christianity is about the mortification of the flesh, the suppression of the flesh. There's a scripture I think that says mortify as in kill, mortify the flesh and its passions. I forget where that's from. What a horrible idea. The idea that the animal part of man is a thing to be demonized or to be suppressed or even repressed, rather than just to be understood as a normal part of your life. We have an evolutionary ancestor who was more aggressive than we are now, so we have those animalistic instincts that are a part of us, which are tempered by higher brain function involving compassionate tendencies and the ability to reason. And that's all part of the human experience. It's not a thing that you have to demonize the way that Christianity does. So I think you can pretty much understand that, if I was in your position, if I was suddenly confronted with the fact that I was going to die, possibly, a lot sooner than I thought, I would not be turning to Christianity for help. I'm really in tune with the fact that it had a very toxic influence on my life, and its false promises of an afterlife are no comfort to me whatsoever, because I've completely got past the idea that the ego is a real thing that needs to survive. Okay, what else? Is there anything else? You say, I think that's it. Basically, that's how Christianity is meant, and that's not bad, I think. Cheers, H. Well, you started off by saying, I found something out about religion I'd like to tell you. You haven't really found anything. I know this is sounding cruel, and I hate to do this, but I have to. You haven't found anything out about religion. You've chosen to believe a particular story that has no objective or rational basis, and it has a whole lot wrong with it too. I was in a Skype conversation recently with a friend of mine who's a Jehovah's Witness and who's struggling with that these days, and he said something very poignant that I never really thought of putting it in this way, but it's very poignant what he said. He was thinking about the various problems that he had with the Bible, and let's face it, Jehovah's Witnesses, Christianity, yes, they're separate, but for the most part they're using the same Bible with very few changes. So this guy, he doesn't particularly like the God of the Old Testament, particularly when he orders genocide, racially motivated genocide. Most Christians turn a blind eye to that sort of thing, but it's right there in the scriptures. 1 Samuel chapter 15 being one example of several. What do you do with that? It doesn't really fit with the Christian paradigm of loving your neighbour, of God being there for all peoples of the world. It's just, if you were nasty to the Jews, then you're going to die, whether you were a man, woman or child. Complete ethnic cleansing. So there's all kinds of problems with Christianity, and this guy said to me, why are we having these problems? If Christianity is objectively true, you shouldn't be able to touch it. Yeah? It should be so clear that this is the truth. But it's not. It's a whole mess of problems, right? And it is. And I've spoken about those at length on this channel and in my book. And it's a non-starter. I have zero fear of ending up in hell because I know it's not a real place. Equally, I know there's no heaven either. And there's no judgment after death because we're just an animal. Judged by the big divine ego, the big king of the universe who acts like a bully some of the time, who says, how dare you build that big Tower of Babel? We'll put a stop to this. It's like, it's nuts. Anyway, I'm digressing. I'm kind of looking for something else to say, but I think I've said it. Look, to summarize, I'm sorry you're going through what you're going through, and I hope I haven't come across as unduly cruel here. I just think there's a far better way of looking at this. than the way you've chosen. I personally think I would have much more comfort believing what I believe than believing in Christianity. And what I believe can be backed up very rationally and doesn't require this leap of faith into wishful thinking and comfort that you have, that you've embraced. Yeah. So if you want I hope you'll stick around, maybe check out some of my other videos. There's a playlist on the main page called New Start Here. So maybe you want to look at that. But anyway, look, thank you for writing to me. And I wish you all the best. Alright, take care, man.